Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we're taking a look through my next batch of more modern hardbacks and first edition fiction. So sit back, relax, and let's take a look. Right then, so not a great deal of cleaning on this one because the book is actually sealed. It's a slipcase set, which is just dusty. So we're going to give it a dust off first of all. So it's Ken Follett. So this is perhaps his most famous book. I'm not a fan of his politics. I'm not a fan of his party. However, this book is an absolute classic, The Pillars of the Earth, a really good sprawling story. And I remember reading an interview with him about this, and he would say that The Pillars of the Earth was the book that he would most, because it came out in the 80s, but 88 I think it was the book that he would most get presented with when he did a signing session, and people would say, oh, are you going to do a follow-up, are you ever going to do a sequel to The Pillars of the Earth? And you know, I think basically he probably run out of new ideas, so that's exactly what he did. So he brought out he made it into a trilogy. And this was the second one, Fall of Giants, another huge tome, and then he did another one called Winter of the World. So some people think it's a good continuation of the story. I just prefer the original, and I think that truly is a classic. I'm not going to deny that. It's just a great story, and you get really invested in the characters, and it's really enjoyable. But that's the second one. That's not too bad, actually. Some of the books we're going to look at today, and I saw this when I pulled them off the bookcase, because I've had them for 30 plus years. In some instances, they've not been stored in the best environment, so consequently, they've got some spotting. But that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. So books that I do want to keep nice copies of, I am making a note of, and potentially those will be upgraded down the line. And I brought down 2 boxes. So usually on my cleaning videos with paperbacks, I just bring 1 box of paperbacks down with me. But because the hardbacks, particularly these, are so massive, I've brought 2 box loads down just to give the video some content, as it were, really. This was the final one. So after Pillars of the Earth, Fall of Giants, then you had Winter of the World. I'm not sure if these ever got like limited printings like the first one in a slipcase. But he did do signings, you know, he did do signings and signed books and things, so. But out of all the books that he wrote, Pillars of the Earth was the one, I think, really, and that's the one he's most famous for. Now, I've been quite enjoying Stephen Fry and collecting Stephen Fry pretty much since he started writing. I was a big fan in the 80s of him and Hugh Laurie as well. They did, they had a couple of series in there. They had the Jeeves and Wooster and a bit of Fry and Laurie, and of course they're in Blackadder as well. And I always liked them as comedy actors. And I even wrote to both of them at one point, and got like quite a nice letter back from Stephen Fry back in the 80s, which I've still actually got somewhere, where he goes on about filming New Blackadder and what have you. So that's really cool. And when the books came out, well, his fiction and his autobiography stuff, and even his non-fiction, is always really interesting. And this, I believe, is the first volume of his autobiography, $13.99, quite an old one. Some of my Stephen Fry's are signed. This one isn't, but some are, basically. But they were bought for the content more than anything else. But these, I've had a long time, and in actual fact, I think I'm going to take, unlike the Ken Folletts, I'm going to take these out of the wrapper to give them a clean. Look how young he looks there. I'll give these a clean outside of the wrapper, and then I'll give the wrapper itself a bit of a once over. It might need a bit of a polish, in actual fact. But I've been doing quite a bit of moving around of my books recently. I sold my Star Wars collection, and that did, or some of it, and it did free up some bookcases, thankfully, which I had action figures on. So that's been really good. So it's given me a bit more hardback space, which is always something to shout about. Now, this on the face of it doesn't seem too bad, but it has got a few little like fingerprints around here. Usually along the top edges as well. So and what I've got a brand new, well not a brand new, but a clean duster. My other one is in the wash at the moment, and in fact the other one may be on its last legs. And I grabbed some Mr. Sheen over here, and we'll spray it on. I'm not going to spray it directly onto the book when it's like that, but I will spray onto the cloth. So I've got a nice wedge, and you see there's like little, like a fingerprint or something like that. This is a highly glossy dust wrapper, so I don't foresee having an issue getting any sort of marks up off it. It's not, I don't think this is particularly collectible. I don't think any of his books are mega collectible like that. I just, as I say, I just collect him for fun. I think that's my adage with all my collectibles, all the things that I collect. I'm not collecting them for any monetary value. I collect them because I just like them. And then if they become valuable in the future, well, that's just a bonus, isn't it? I've always sort of lived by that rationale with collecting, and it seems to do me well. There we go. That just looks a lot brighter than it did to begin with. So let's pop the book back in there. That's about as good as we're going to get that one. So we've got a few to go through. I think this is the second volume of biography. Yeah, it's a pound dearer, so I'm assuming it is. I think The Liar was first, and this was the second one. 1992. Yeah, quite a bit of toning on this one. So once again, I think we'll take the wrapper off, give all the edges a good dust. So basically, I'm going in the top rail like that with the toothbrush. You can see the dust coming off that actually, can't you? Bottom's okay, but then we'll go in with the shoe brush to really get it. And you may not be able to pick this up, but you can still almost see along the very sort of top edges, you can almost see where dust has sort of bled through, if that makes sense. It's just seeped through over time. Now I don't think this wrapper is quite as bad as the first one. But it will still benefit from a bit of a once over. It's not mint, or rather there are a few little marks on it. Once again, it's just along the top edge. It seems to be where dust wrappers are the most susceptible, you know. But some of these I have had for 30 odd years, and they're not, as I said, they've not always been in the best environment. So I've only got myself to blame, you know, but it was also circumstance, you know, I just didn't have anywhere for them that was like completely free of any moisture. So a few of them were stored in a not ideal environment for a little bit of time, you know, not for years and years and years, but for some time. And that's just enough to, unfortunately, to get the old foxing in on these. And I don't like that with more modern books. It's a shame, but what can you do, eh? What can you do? At least we know when we're done here that these will be as good as possible. This one's a hippopotamus. It was the proof to the hippopotamus. I remember getting this one from a rep friend of mine. I was in the book biz at the time, and he knew I was into Stephen Fry, and I didn't actually realise it was limited. 339 of 500. That's quite cool, isn't it? This one's not signed. Remember reading this one. It's like a humorous novel. I think it might actually be his first novel, possibly, because the others were autobiographical. Don't have loads of proofs in my collection. I've got some for the authors that I really, really love. But generally, I used to have a lot more, and I generally sort of fell out of love with proofs, to be honest. I've got some though. Generally, proofs are only put out if there's a bit of a question mark over how good it's going to be, or the publisher just think this is so good we've got to put it into a proof form to generate some sort of buzz, you know. And that's generally why they're sort of produced. I mean, I always call them proofs. Nowadays, they call them advanced readers' copies, you know, ARCs. But they'll always be proofs to me. And when we were in the book game, when I was in the book game back in the 90s and early 2000s, the reps would come in from the big publishing companies with an armload of the latest proofs, which would always be cool. And you'd be scanning it to see if there was somebody in it that you liked. There we are. It's about as good as I think we're going to get that one. Let's give the edges a bit of a rub. It's a very, very windy day today. In fact, the door of the studio is shaking a little bit. Now, this was Hippopotamus. This is the finished book of the one we just saw in proof form. And my spine is ever so badly faded. Look at that. It should be like that. Now, there are actually two jackets to this because this book came out around Christmas. And the publisher came round with a Christmas jacket of this, which had the hippopotamus with the Father Christmas hat on. I don't know if one is more valuable than the other, to be honest. And oh, look, there we are. Look, that's typical of me. At the time, when this must have come out, this was probably the paperback. I picked up 3 bookmarks. How ridiculous is that? But there you go. That is that. See, that's the collector in you. See, it's in your genes. Very entertaining book. I really enjoyed the hippopotamus. Actually, not too bad at all. But this copy is certainly the worse for wear. I'm not sure if it's signed. It might be. Oh yeah, that one is signed. So yeah, definitely. This is definitely a keeper. I knew I had some signed Stephen Fry books, but I think I got that from the rep again. Who knew I was really into him. The last thing I saw him in was Succession. No, it wasn't. Not Succession. It was the one on Apple. It was The Morning Show. Is what I saw him in. Not too bad at all. Plays quite a good character in that. Right, so yeah, here's the wrapper, which really I'm going to need to replace this book because that's a nice signed copy of it. But this wrapper is, it's got that awful staining there. But I won't worry too much. I will give it a cursory clean because it's not like it's a massive priority or anything, you know. But it's not going to hurt to give it a clean here. Get them looking as good as possible. Quite sun bleached, this one. Must have been in just the worst possible spot. Nowadays, none of these books have got any sunlight going onto them whatsoever because we know it's the killer. Yeah, there we are. That's about as good as it's going to get. I remember with the alternate cover, the rep came round with a big roll of them, and because it was Christmas, we went round and replaced them all. You know, all the stock. Just threw these ones away. So how ironic that I would have thrown the spares of that one away. Got a few more Stephen Fry here. The Stars tennis balls. Didn't enjoy this one as much as the hippopotamus. Of course, it's really, really dusty. Goodness knows this has never been cleaned. Once again, it's really, unfortunately, really suffered the old foxing. So I'm hoping this isn't a signed one because I'll be a bit disappointed. It is. Look at that. It's a signed one as well. What a shame. But there you go. You know, it is what it is. I'll keep it. But it is a signed one with faults. It doesn't matter. I've got to admit, the books that we've actually done in this process, which we've cleaned in the hardback collection. They've really come up so nicely. They're a real joy to have a look at now, you know. So there we are. So once again, it's just, you know, it's in the same old spots, isn't it? Just sort of along the top edges. This one isn't as bad as some, but can you see the little shadow of dust down the bottom there? Literally like a shadow down there, which it's all come off once we get the polish on. Yeah, it's just gone. Yeah, quite a few books from this sort of period that I've moved on long ago, you know. But my favourite authors, I couldn't get rid of those, and Stephen Fry does come under that. He is a clever writer. Above your average, shall we say. His most recent 2 autobiographies, I have read them, but it was all the stories that he trotted out on the chat shows quite a bit, you know, and I sort of then went off him a little bit. But these early ones I really like, you know. Okay, a couple more Stephen Fry. So this was another fiction one, Making History. This wasn't bad, I seem to remember. Also signed. I didn't realise this was signed. Yeah, the stories that he would trot out on things like Graham Norton and things like that. I ought to put that in with the hippopotamus. Yeah, on shows like, you know, Graham Norton or, you know, Jonathan Ross, that sort of thing. He, you know, like when it was early in their careers, and he was spending Christmas with Hugh Laurie, and literally out of the blue, Princess Diana phones up and says, "Oh, could we pop round for a cup of tea?" You can imagine, can't you? Hurriedly trying to get the place looking good, like, you know. He said it was quite a surreal experience. The telly was on in the back. I think it was at Christmas, you know. Not sure if Charles accompanied her or not at the time. Great stories, but ones that, if you watch interviews with Steve Fry, he does tend to tell the same ones quite often, you know. The last thing I listened to him on was a fantastic Sherlock Holmes story, podcast, and it's a podcast that that you play. It's basically it's devoted to the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes series, the Granada series, and Stephen Fry has always been a big Holmes fan ever since he was a young age, as have I, really. But he went to the next extreme, joined the Society in London, and has written about Holmes and collecting Holmes and things like this, you know. And he regaled his Jeremy Brett story, which was basically when he was making a bit of Fry and Laurie, him and Hugh Laurie, it was about to go out on PBS in America, I think it was Fry and Laurie. It might have been Jeeves and Wooster, but basically Fry and Laurie were sent out to LA for the launch of the PBS Armchair Theatre or Masterpiece Theatre, something like that. And it was a real all expenses paid lavish trip to America. And on their way over, I think Sherlock Holmes, the Granada was like series 1 or series 2. And on the way over, Stephen Fry was sat next to Jeremy Brett. So Jeremy Brett was telling him a bit about his story, and I think Brett's nickname when he was a kid was something like Bubbles or something like that. And he went to one of the private colleges, like Eton, one of the biggies, and he was quite a good-looking choir boy. And at the end of the, he used to do the sing in front of the school, and he would get like little messages put in his pigeonhole, and he assumed this was just like almost like fan mail in effect. And he would he had some photographs made up because he thought he was a bit of a star even back then at school, and he would send them to the people who'd written him letters saying, "Oh, I really loved your singing," and things like that. Years later, of course, because he was a good-looking boy, he realised that that wasn't actually what they were writing to him about, and that the boys were actually interested in something quite different to his singing abilities. Anyway, one such chap was basically they got to LA and they met the British ambassador, saying, "Oh, very, very good to see you." And of course, it was someone Jeremy Brett had gone to school with, and he sort of looks over to Stephen Fry with a nod and says, "Yeah, this is one of the guys who wrote to me." It was I guess he told it a little bit better than I could, but it was an excellent story, and that's one I hadn't heard of before. So there you go. I don't know if that's actually in his book, but that was his Jeremy Brett story, and it was a good one. I honestly cannot remember the name of that podcast, but it's great. If you just look up, if you listen to podcasts like I do religiously, if you just look up Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes, you'll find the one. And they managed to get quite a few of the stars now interviewed, now that it was a bit more established. And the two hosts that do it, I think they're brothers, they come over to the UK, although they're American, they come over to the UK quite a bit. And they've been able to hook up with a lot of the surviving cast, which is a good thing to do, since a fair few of them are getting on a bit now. Okay, right. Grange Hill. Okay, so I remember actually getting this Grange Hill book. Well, my mother bought it for me when I was a kid. I was a big fan of Grange Hill when it came out. It's a bit of fun. And this is one of those ones published by the BBC. The stories were written by Phil Redmond, who created the show. He went on to create a Brookside as well. There's some of the cast sadly have already departed from Brookside. The chap there, I forget his name, but he went recently, fairly recently. Todd Carty's still around, Tucker. But they do sort of, there are Grange Hill conventions, and they do sort of stay in touch, the cast, I think, Not sure. I mean, it ran for a long time, and it was almost like a soap, wasn't it? So certainly, when you were at school, it was probably a good thing to watch, but not later. I remember one of the channels, they re-showed some of the early ones, and I think from the start, and in fact, I think you can watch the early ones on BritBox now. Not that I've ever had the desire to do it, but it's good to see that they are available, but I can imagine they must be incredibly dated. I mean, Grange Hill, blimey, when did it start? It was it the late 1970s? Certainly, I think it was that sort of era, Right, I've just readjusted the camera a little bit because these books are getting rather big. I'm struggling to get them all in, but this was a great book. I think this one came out last year. So, Selected Stories of Patricia Highsmith. What a stunning design that is. It's published by Virago, really great women's press publisher who I have a lot of admiration for. Even outside the wrapper, it's rather striking, isn't it? So yeah, I can't imagine this has got much in the way of dust on it, but let's have a look and see what's exactly in this book. Yes, it's a lot of her short stories. Loads of them there. Good stuff. Yeah, I bet that's a great read. I've had it about a year, and maybe a bit longer, and still haven't actually got around to reading it, so I accept your scorn, but I will get around to it, I promise. I've read the books, the Ripley novels, for example. I have, because it's such a stunning design, I've had this one sort of face out on a bookshelf, and it's picked up a little bit of just dust, just clung to it a little bit, but yes, a nice book there. And when I bought mine, I bought it off Amazon, and it was cheaper to buy the hardback than the paperback. because the hardback was going out of print, so it was like half price, which was like a couple of quid cheaper than the paperback, so I was quids in there. Michael Jacks, great little author, local to me. I met him many times over the years, did a few events with him as well. I think this is a signed one. Hiya, Jules. Good luck with the new job. Okay. Must have just got a new job at the time. Yeah, there we are. Yeah, so he's a local guy. Yeah, the Knights Templar books are not a series that I've ever read, but they are really nice, and I'm going to keep this one because it's a good memory of Michael. He's still around. In fact, he's actually on YouTube, where he reviews of all things. I think he's called Rightly Witterlings or something like that. And I think of all things he reviews fountain pens, if you can believe it. That's quite a nice one. Yeah, he wrote several more after that. I'm not sure if he's still writing the Knights Templar books, but there you go. Hugh Laurie. So just speaking about Fry and Laurie, this was Hugh Laurie's often forgotten novel, which apparently is fantastic. Once again in a proof form. 6th of May 1996, heavily foxed on the outsides, I'm afraid, and this one isn't signed, but I remember it coming out, and I'll give it a cursory polish there on the front. I remember this one getting published, and I remember it doing pretty well, even as like a backlist title, so I'm not sure if it's still in print. I'd be surprised if it wasn't, but obviously Hugh Laurie is much more known as an actor than a writer. And I think he was probably getting a bit of encouragement from Stephen Fry. And I remember in the bookseller when this one was launched, seeing some photos from the launch party. And of course, Stephen Fry was there because they were still working together quite closely at that point, you know. So pretty cool. And it is a good, fun, like comedy novel, like a black comedy. Elmore Leonard, look at this. And a signed one to boot. So this is his Westerns, Elmore Leonard's Westerns, so pretty cool, eh? This one's once again a fairly new book, so we don't really need to take it off the book itself, but we will give the top a bit. Now, this one I bought from eBay, and let's just have a little look at this. Look, this is all the magazines that it came from. That's pretty nice, isn't it? There would have been Western pulps, those would have been. Cool, listen to the wind. And there we are, look, little signature under there on the title page. That's really nice. 2006, this UK edition. Oh, it's got a little interview with him at the front as well. That's also really nice. Oh, I want to read this now. Obviously, it's not going to be his most, you know, polished work, I wouldn't have thought. Because a lot of these big authors who became big, did so on the back of, you know, they cut their teeth on the pulps. But I'm hoping that rather than doing them all, they've chosen his best Western stories. But it says the complete one, so it is actually all his Western, isn't it? So I guess there'll be a few good ones and probably a few questionable ones. But I'm very tempted to give that one a go quite soon, that actually. Because I do love a Western. I haven't been reading much in the way of Westerns lately. Now, I've got a couple of Red Dwarf books, both of which are looking a little bit the worse for wear. They've got foxing, dusty, and faded spines, which is a bit of a shame, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. If they're really bad, I may just, and they're not signed, I may just replace them, because I do have all the Red Dwarf books, actually. But I always knew these hardbacks were a little bit the worse for wear. Let's have a flick through. I can't see any sign of this being signed. Of course, at this point, Grant Naylor, Doug Grant and Rob Grant rather, and Doug Naylor had fallen out, and they went their own ways and did like a book each, which was a bit of a shame because that sort of happened as Red Dwarf became massively popular. I think they've sort of reconciled now, but I don't think it'll ever be the same as what it was in those sort of early days of Red Dwarf, if you know what I mean, you know. This one, yeah, it is a little bit the worse for wear, unfortunately. I mean, it's absolutely fine to read. And the thing is with these books, the Red Dwarf books are all of them. They're really good reads. Really, it's just because you know the characters in your head, it's like reading an episode of the show. It's as simple as that. So from that point of view, they are definitely recommended. It's just got, it's not ideal. And this is one I will definitely put on my upgrade list. Certainly not difficult to get. They are quite cheap, these, because they sold well, you know. It wasn't like they were scarce books to get at the time or anything like that, you know. So I shall put that on my unofficial hardback upgrade list to get a better copy of down the line. Now, sadly, the same story is true of this one, which was Backwards by Rob Grant. Once again, the spine has faded. I think it should be a really like deep black like that, but it's not. It's gone up, and it's tanned. It's perhaps not as bad as the first one. Let's have a look. Oh, well, that one is signed by Rob Grant, so I'm quite relieved that the actual book itself isn't actually foxed as badly as the other one. So I can sort of live with that. I might still get an unsigned one and get a new jacket for it. I don't know. Of course, once we've done all these, hardback-wise, we then move on to a naval author called Julian Stockwin, of which I've got quite a run of his books. So that's going to be, that could almost be a video in itself, but it won't be. There'll be some other stuff as well. And then we're almost done, and we move on to the all the non-fiction sort of autobiographies and biographies, of which there is a lot of those. There's quite a bit of those to get through, but that'll be fun. Once again, I'll give this a cursory wipe because it's not too bad. It's definitely not as bad as the other one. At the same time, it's not as nice as I would have liked, but it is signed, so hey. Now I'm going to put this book back on, the wrapper back on the book, and then I'm going to give it another polish because it's so springy. You can sort of see the fingerprints on the back, and if I can just put it straight on, that will clean up those fingerprints quite nicely without doing the book any more damage at all. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, so it's not bad. It's definitely not bad. Better than Last Humans. So, but I do think because it's signed, I might once again track down both of them. I can probably pick them up in a pair without too much trouble. Now, the last little batch of books is the Mars trilogy by Stanley Robinson. Now, I'm a big fan of these, and I bought them as they came out. I read them as they came out, and I remember the agonising wait till Blue Mars came out. Now, I've got them all in first edition, but this is the American first of Red Mars. Then I've got the British editions for the rest of them, and unfortunately, once again, they've not been stored in the best of condition, and it's a tragedy really because they're so beautiful. However, they're not the mega money that they used to be. They are not. So I used to see sets of these books, the British firsts, for in the hundreds of pounds, and that's just ridiculous. They're never worth that. In fact, I've seen a signed copy of Red Mars sell recently for 50 quid, which I think is far more realistic. And it has actually come from Ian Banks's personal library, if you can believe it, So I am on the lookout for an upgrade set of the Mars trilogy, because what I have got is like dump bin headers, and I've got shop display posters. I've got some book plates that have never been laid in, so although I've got them, I could have laid the signed book plates into my books, and I haven't done it because the books just weren't up to scratch. But that's the American first edition. And thankfully, the wrappers themselves have already been protected, so they're all in quite nice shape, you know. Except, as I said, just all of them just either a little bit faded, or the books themselves are just not quite up to scratch, which is, it is what it is, really. You know, there's nothing you can really sort of do about that. The only way I'm going to fix it is to replace the copies that I've got, and I don't really want to do that, but unfortunately it's the only way they're going to be tip-top. So here is Rev Mars itself. So this is the important one. This is the one that's the most expensive, and if you've never read this series, they're just fantastic. I have got a video planned on them, on the series, but I've got to dig it. I don't know where that promo stuff is. I've got a vague idea. I've got all my dump bin headers in one place, but what I haven't got is the shop display posters. Now I've got a big box of posters, and they're all rolled up, and they're all sort of stood up. Some of it's in tube, some of it's just loose, but in one of them is my Kim Stanley Robinson Mars posters. So I'd like to find that before I do the Kim Stanley Robinson video. Now I noticed, unfortunately, on this one, that it's got that splosh or something there, so I did get out some sandpaper, just in the vain hope that I could hold it tight. We could see if we could just scrape that off a little bit, because I am probably going to get another copy of this one. And, use the old rubber on it as well. Well, I don't know if it's made it any better at all. The mark is still there. Maybe it's a little bit fainter, I don't know. Thing is, the book is great, and you can pick up a hardback of this if you don't want one in tip-top shape for about £15, which isn't bad, is it? I think it's fantastic, and I really do recommend it. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Hard SF is not something everyone wants to read, but I loved it. What escapism this is, and I think it's a great trilogy. I really do. And well, it is the colonization of Mars. It's almost like Kim Stanley Robinson's been there. He certainly gave it a hell of a lot of thought. So here's book 2 then, which was Green Mars. This is my original copy. I've never met Kim Stanley. He's been over a few times to the UK, but I've personally never met him. Look at that. You see how the dust has just fallen through over the years, because these are over 30 years old now, these books. Amazing, isn't it? So they picked up, like this one's picked up some foxing. Really unfortunate. So I will have to get a shot of it, but I always keep these editions, even though I might get better ones, simply because they're my original ones, really, you know. Although let's be honest, who's got room for extra copies of hardbacks? Not me, really. Yeah, it's got a few faults, this one, sadly. I said it was my original one, and I would have taken it out the wrapper when I read it back in the day when it came out. I remember just carrying this around with me everywhere until I'd finished it. Even the audiobooks are, well, as you can imagine, the unabridged audiobooks of these are huge, absolutely huge. It's like, I think they're like 30 hours, maybe even longer than that. Imagine getting that as a job. Right, your your new job is you've got to read the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson. Imagine it. You think, right, I'm just going to put the next year aside. Anyway, this is the last one, Blue Mars. Maybe this one's going to be alright, I don't know. It's got tanning, but I can't, oh, it's sort of on the side, look, it's like this, it's got side foxing. You can just see the start of it coming in. What a shame. See, this is why, I guess, my friend Steve, the Outlaw bookseller, keeps his books bagged so that none of this moisture can ever get in. As I said, the good news is the trilogy is much more accessible and not as expensive as it once was. So you are able to pick these books up at a reasonable price nowadays. This one, to be honest, is borderline. I'm not going to rush out and get another copy of it, but I probably would the first two, in all honesty. But I'd like to find them signed, and as I said, I saw a signed one from Ian M. Banks's collection. I mean, how incredible was that? It was it's signed by Stanley Robson to Ian M. Banks, and they'd swapped books reading the description, and that had only gone for 50 quid, and that was the first book Red Mars signed. I mean, that would have been such a cool, and I definitely would have been in the market for that. So I guess I'm going to have to put my old radar out there and see what I can do. Now, because the Mars trilogy was so big, he did capitalise on it one last bit, and in the same style, almost like as a bookend, they released The Martians, which is not part of the trilogy, but it is a sort of a spin-off in a way, you know. And they put a lot of, because by this point the Mars trilogy was a modern day hit, they their British publisher, or his British publisher, HarperCollins, really pulled out all the stops, as you can see. So I've got lots of POS and bookmarks and posters and stuff like that for this book. And so I've got a little envelope with some book plates in, Kim Stanley Robinson book plates, 1999. So even this is 24 years old now. But I think they did a very good job in the marketing of this one, and it was very good that they kept it all in the same style, with the Mars looking like that. One of the most interesting things, which I did bring with me today because it's kept with the books, is this. It's a promotional mouse mat, which I used for quite some time, with a built-in solar powered calculator. Look at that. Mental, eh? A mouse pad calculator. Well, it does say it's batteried. How mad is that? So yeah, once again, it's faded over the years, but I would suspect that there's probably not many of these survived. Wouldn't you agree? Can't imagine there's many of these around. So if you're a Kim Stanley Robinson collector, you are going to want one of these. I've never looked it up. I mean, maybe they're common, I don't know, but my suspicion is they're probably quite scarce. There we are. Just the thing to get underneath the keys there. That looks pretty nice to me. A few little marks. And the back was certainly looking a bit the worse for wear. But certainly a nice little related bit of memorabilia, should we say, you know, which I'm very pleased to have. There we go. Looking spanking. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching today. I hope you've enjoyed this latest batch of hardbacks. Next week is going to be the slightly more offbeat, obscure and minor vintage Penguin paperback series. We've never covered them on the channel, on either of the channels before, so look out for that next week. Thank you very much for watching today. If you've enjoyed it, do please give the video a thumbs up. Do please hit the subscribe button if you've not already, for regular vintage book cleaning action, and I'll look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye.